Calling the meeting to order of the Pilot Revenue Committee. Today, the July the 8th, we are joined by, in no particular order, Mr. Jay Latorre. We are joined by Patrick Greenhall. Hi, Patrick, good seeing you. Patrick Burns, Lindsay Hackett, Karen Lee, and Ciara Hanlon. And again, thank you, Focus Springfield, for facilitating this, and the guys at the office for all your help. So I hope everybody is staying hydrated. It's extremely hot outside, and please make sure you drink plenty of water. So in the last meeting, which I thought we had a very productive meeting, I felt we did a lot of advancements, but does anybody has anything they want to report first? No? Okay. Ciara, I believe we had talked about, are you on the line, Ciara?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good to see you. I believe you were going to do some follow-up on formulas for pilot committee.
Yes. So I did look at what some other committee or what other places have done, specifically with Boston. I think we had talked about this of how Boston did 25% of what the tax bill would be if they were taxed. And actually at Karen's request, I worked with Patrick and assessors to come up with kind of estimates of what that would be. And based on property values of 15 million or greater in total value per owner. So if, for example, if Bay State owns multiple properties, it totals all of their properties. It would add between kind of $8.5 to $12.5 million in revenue to use the 25% of the commercial industrial property tax rate.
So that will be based on $15 million.
Yes, if their total value is greater than $15 million. I did look at lower than that, but it does not add much more. It adds like 7.5% more value, and it's for properties that are all further below that. So it's between 5 and 15 million, and most of them are around about 5 or 7 million. So it doesn't capture any more. It doesn't capture many more organizations to use the smaller number.
Counselor, would it be all right if Ciara brought up the summary on that?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, yep, let me just share my screen. Video share screen.
Thank you for doing this, by the way. I was able to take a quick look at it.
No problem. Oh, there we go. Share. Okay. So let me share this. Okay. And I can minimize those. Okay. So this is the analysis. So for nonprofit charitables, with a total value of over 15 million, the two owners that fell into that category were Bay State and Mercy Hospital. So using those rates, if we were to create pilot agreements using those rates, we would capture an additional 5.2 million of revenue, or if we allowed them to, as Boston does, offset some of that with community benefits, then it might be closer to about 2 million or 2.6 million in revenue. For education-based properties, we would capture more, so that would be about 7.3 million. I also ran it using the residential rate, and Patrick can speak a little more to this, but essentially, if a property is being used as a dorm, then the proper thing to do would be for it to be billed or taxed at the residential property rate, which is much lower than the commercial industrial rate. We don't specifically separate them in the list that I was provided with. So I created a range by just assuming, by doing it with the full assumption of it being the commercial rate and then full assumption using residential rate. Then these are the additional properties and organizations that would be captured if we looked at values between 5 million and 15 million. As you can see, most of them are closer to 7 or 8 million. There weren't many that were just under that 15 million mark.
Yeah.
So we didn't add much value there for a total additional of about 700 million. And similarly, we did not add much value by including the additional education properties.
Okay. So.
And
so
I can send you a copy of this as well.
yeah, if you could please send that to me, and to all of us, actually, that would be very fantastic.
Yeah.
Question
Oh.
for you. Give me a second here. So 84, 78. Okay. So assuming in a perfect world that all these nonprofits will say we're going to do the right thing, we're going to pitch in, that will be a lot of money. That will be 3.5, 8. Can you go up a little?
So that's as high as it goes there. I can go down.
Or 8?
It would be, if we only used the properties at more than 15 million, it would be somewhere between 8.5 and 12.5 million in total value. Now, as I mentioned, Boston and some other cities do use community benefits to offset that rate.
Yeah.
And that relies on a committee kind of determining what the value of that is. So some of it's very easy to proportion. So if that's scholarships to local students or contributions to neighborhood councils, that's pretty easy to provide an estimate for what that could be offset. Others might be a little more difficult if they're trying to just do, their community values being more general of bringing in business to the local community, things of that nature. But in total, that value amount would be the same. So I think Boston uses, I believe, 50% as their range of what can be offset that way.
So my point is, in a perfect world, if all these nonprofits will pitch in, we may be able to capture for new revenue anywhere between 5 million to what, 12 million?
Yes, I believe so.
That's a lot. Patrick, you have a question?
I do. Yeah, not really a question, but just a caveat here. So the Board of Assessors, we are charged with determining full and fair cash values of all properties. And when we have to prioritize staff time, making sure that exempt properties, property record cards are 100% accurate is not necessarily always the highest priority. So I only say that because this is sort of general kind of working information. It's what we have as Board of Assessors now. But if we were to adopt some sort of policy to ask, exempt properties, including, let's say, the colleges, where there are multiple buildings involved, I would definitely need an opportunity to make sure that our property record cards are accurate. So there will be definitely a time commitment. But so I'm comfortable with working with these numbers, but just know that maybe some of the details, when the further we get, I may not be as comfortable then.
Yeah, it's a moving target. Okay. All right, thank you, Greenhalgh, for that clarification. Sure. Excellent. Anybody has a question on that analysis? No? Okay.
So yes, actually, Patrick, I do have a question. Patrick, thank you for that explanation. So for example, Western New England that has 25 single family homes, those are not in there individually, but like how did you assess the residential properties?
Well, residential properties are slightly different. So those are probably under a sales comparison approach, but they're in as exempt. So those are probably pretty accurate. But it's more of the school facilities, the dorms. If you're talking about just like a property on, Old Farm Road or something like that, that Western New England acquired, those are probably pretty accurate. I'm less concerned about a single family that they're using, for an office space or something like that, to sort of make sure that our value in our property record card is accurate. It's much more the bigger campus buildings, where there necessarily wouldn't be a huge focus of time committed to valuing an exempt property.
So for example, the property on Old Farm Road that they're using as a department head's office space, that would not come under residential in this scenario. Is that correct?
I mean, right. I'd have to take a look at each one of them and see what they're classified as, how recently we've been out there. If it was recently acquired, it was a prior residential. Well, our property record card is probably pretty accurate and pretty up to date. But once it becomes exempt, there's far less of a focus on that. And I even know Boston took an entire year to make sure their property record cards were updated and accurate before they started implementing their pilot program.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sierra, can you go down a little bit on that report? Just a little bit. Okay. Thank you. Any other question on that report?
Counselor, I had one.
Sure, Jay.
Thank you. Sierra, I just wanted to triple check, say in the case of Bay State Medical, this one line represents the totality of all the buildings that are owned by Bay State. So not just the main campus, but some of their other additional buildings that are in the North End and different assets they may have across the city. Is that right?
Yes, I believe it should. It's using the way it's being run is based on the owner title. So for anywhere where the owner is listed as Bay State Medical Center, it totaled up all of those values. Now, if they did have a property that's for some reason with a different owner name, it might not be captured there. But similarly to what Patrick said, when it comes time to really evaluate the property values, a more in-depth look could be given to all of the owner titles to just make sure that it's capturing everything. But it's going based off of a summary of all exempt parcels and using the names that are associated with those.
Great. That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. Anybody else? Nope.
And my apologies for my camera being off. I'm having some problems with my Wi-Fi today.
No problem, Sarah.
The
No.
best way to be able to connect.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm pretty impressed with that. But Sarah, I just want to make sure we talked about last time that the entities, they can use 25% if they contribute 25%, 12.5 of that can be offset by doing community benefits, correct?
So I believe it would be 50% of the 25% could be offset with community benefits for a total of 12.5% of what their bill would be if they were taxed at the full rate.
Okay.
So for example, I can do a quick analysis of here. So it'd be about this divided by 2. So it would look for this, if it would be 12.5% of the total, so you could go.
You're
This
much
is
quicker
what
than
it
me.
would, this is what it would look like for what we would gain in cash value, as well as then community value, if that is the rate that the committee chose to go.
But that would be only for the properties at over $50 million.
Yes, yes.
Now, can you give me a quick overview again of what the community benefits are defined as?
There is a wide range, and again, that would be something that would be down to the committee to set, whether you'd like to set it as direct monetary benefit. So, for example, if AIC provided scholarship to local students, they could use that direct cash value as contributing to that amount of community benefit. If Bay State Medical Center provides donations to the local neighborhood councils, you could use that value. Similarly, if they provide grants or something to local businesses, and that would be down to the committee to determine what does and does not count. And I believe you could also make it a rule that the committee could meet annually to review any new requests that might not have been included in the initial overview if something new comes up that hasn't been looked at before. So where it would get a little harder would be things that don't have direct and clear monetary value. So if Bay State conducted a street cleanup or a cleanup of the parks using their staff, something like that is harder to put monetary value on
Right, yeah,
and not as clear.
right, I understand. And, okay, all right, thank you, Sierra. Any questions on that? Yeah, and Sierra, again, if you could email that to all of us, please.
Yes.
My hand is raised, Counselor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Give me a second. Oh, Councilor Whitfield, my apologies. I did not see you. Thank you for joining us. We're joined by Councilor Whitfield. Councilor Whitfield, floor is yours.
All right, there's two things. First, I have to address something that was brought to my attention, that someone was offended by the picture I had on my Zoom. First is my personal property. It's my computer, and I can put on there whatever I want. But if anyone ever has an issue with anything that I'm doing, you don't have to go to the president of the council. You can come directly to me. And also, we can have an adult conversation why the Coalition for an Equitable Economy will be offensive to you. I think that's something personal, and that's something that you need to internalize, whoever it was. And this is recorded. The person may not even be here. I don't even know who it is. But this is a computer that I pay for and my Wi-Fi, and I will put whatever I want on my computer. And if it offends you, then let's have a conversation about it. That's number one. Now, to the point of the chart and the 12% or the 12.5% or 50% of the CIP, what if the organization spends more than the 25% in the CIP bill?
So
what happens? Is there cap at the most that they can use of what they give out to the community? Is 50% of the 25%? I don't know if that's entirely fair. So for example, I'm on the Bay State Community Advisory Board. And then if you think about community benefits, you might think about all of the bills that they write off. You might think about the community money that they give out for multiple events that they sponsor. They also give out multiple large DON grants throughout the year. There's just like, we really need to know what they're doing in the community before we can say, well, we're going to cap it at 12.5%. And I haven't heard any conversation about that, just generating revenue. But sometimes you may lose while you're trying to gain more revenue. You might lose some of those benefits that they're giving out to the community.
So using Boston as the model, I do believe that before any agreement was come to, they did have the organizations that would be involved get together and give their input. So I would think that in a situation like that, I would agree that it would make sense to ask these organizations to provide an estimate of their current community services. The 12.5% cap that Boston uses is a limit to what can be used as the offset to the revenue portion. They are, at that point still welcome to provide more benefit to the community. And again, this would all be determined, I believe, by this committee or city councilors. So we don't have to follow Boston's model, but based on Boston's model, that's the cap of what they can use to offset the direct cash payments that they would have to make to the city. Any community benefits they do above that would not lower their cash payments if we were to use Boston's model.
Okay, and when was Boston's model implemented?
I
Do you
can
know?
confirm, I believe it was either 2016 or 2018, but I can go into my records quickly and confirm that. And I know they are
Yeah.
actually in the process of updating it as well.
Okay, and Boston's model, is it an ordinance that's in place? So it's a law that this has to be done?
It's not an ordinance,
Okay.
it's an agreement that they came to with the nonprofits in the area and colleges.
Okay, because I used to, when I worked in finance, I did work on the pilot. And I think we couldn't mandate them to do anything because they were nonprofits. But I guess if you can come up to a feasible agreement, but I just heard some of the pushback back then is, you know, we do a lot for the community and for the city, and some of it may equal more than the 25% that we're asking them to pay in a pilot. And so I just want to be careful that we don't lose some of those benefits in an effort to generate more revenue through the pilot.
Right.
Those are my comments, Counselor.
Thank you, Councilor Whitfield. Very well. Well, with that being said, I do have to say,
Can I just address something that Tracy said? real
in
quick?
a second, it will be after Patrick. Greenhall?
Oh, Karen, you can ask your question. That's fine.
Sure,
Okay,
go ahead,
thank you.
Karen.
I think it was the last meeting that I had mentioned that hospitals have to supply community benefits in order to keep their tax exempt status. And it might have been you, Tracy, or maybe President Fenton that asked about that. So I did look it up, and there is an IRS link that I can send you. But that's true. In order to keep their community benefits, they have to, their tax exempt status, they have to provide a certain amount of community benefits. So that's not a voluntary thing. So this would be like in addition to what they're mandated to do. So that's just something.
I'll read the law because I don't know if there's a mandated amount, but I know the DON funds that they give out to the community is mandated. Like that is something that comes from the government. But in addition to those funds, and that's based on every building and every location and what the population is in the area, there's certain funds that they have to give out per the government every year. Those are called DON funds. I don't know a whole ton about them, but I know that is mandated because we always work on those. We just gave out $500,000 recently in the form of grants, $100,000 for 5 organizations. And we get to determine what it's going to be used for. But I know that those are mandated. And I know when they build a new site at the Mass Mutual building, there's going to be some funding for that also. But I would like to see what that amount is, Karen. So if you can give us the link, and I think that was me, but I think Mike said, or Councilor Fenton said that he would like to see the law on it.
Okay, so here's the thing about the law. It doesn't give an amount. It's not like a tax chart where if you make X amount that you owe this much in tax. It's really doesn't have a floor or a ceiling to it. However, in Massachusetts, our Attorney General did put in place that tax exempt organizations have to start listing out their community benefits, which is extremely helpful in our case here. So there are some changes in that, and I can pull all that together.
So let me ask a question to the group. Burns, you might have the answer to this question too. How do we go about requesting that information to, let's just limit it to the entities that Ciara identified on her chart?
Well, I think the first thing, Victor, is that information is publicly available. And you can check their tax return. And I think I might have sent it to you or to someone that how to directly link to it. So you can look at their tax form, see how much they made, what was the profit, how much they did in community benefits. and then the bottom line profit or loss. Then to supplement that, it's another website that I just mentioned about the Attorney General, where you can take that X dollar amount that they said that they paid in community benefits, and then you can see the listing on this other website. So there's going to be some, analysis and kind of digging into it a little bit to see exactly, what it flushes out like.
But no, I'm sure that we can corroborate that information, but I'm sure that I would like to hope that if we ask the question directly to the horse's mouth, that it will be straightforward with us.
Well, right, but I think
it
that
has
we
been
need to
naive
do
on
the
my part.
research first on those areas and then speak with them. So
Patrick, do you have, Mr. Burns, do you have any thoughts on that conversation?
I think it would require meeting with the entities like we did the last time the committee was put together individually. But as Councilor Whitfield said, these payments are voluntary, so it's not mandated.
Right. Greenhall?
Yes, so I think one of the initial things, now that we have a list of some of the larger organizations and their potential values, I think an immediate next step would be to find out what are the city's costs that are involved, because to Councilor Whitfield's point, we definitely need an understanding from their organizations of what are they providing the communities. I was not part of the first pilot committee, however many years ago, but I do know that the city sent a letter, I think, saying, these are our costs for your organization. And they essentially wrote a letter back saying, yes, but we provide all of these other things and we are not interested in a pilot payment. So I think we may need to know what are the city's costs and figure out what our policy is. And then to Pat Burns's point is, in Boston, they invited them in. So the organizations had a vested interest in flying with the pilot.
Right. No, absolutely. And as I stated before, we will ask them to come in at some point. But Greenhall, let me ask you this: what factors do you consider cost? What goes into that formula?
I don't know exactly. Maybe Lindsay or Kira can help, but I'm assuming, police, fire services, how many times do we get calls to go out there? I don't know if we can link in, plowing sort of streets in the area. I don't know what the formula looks like, but I think that could be a good starting point.
Right. Okay. Any thoughts on that? Anybody?
Yeah, I agree with Patrick about what the costs would be. I mean, those are the ones he just mentioned are the ones that initially, pop into my head, not to say there aren't more. But that would take a little time.
I hear you. Any other thoughts? So I don't see why there's any reason that we cannot walk and chew gum at the same time. Patrick, I would love if you could start in that project. I know you have that other project with Jay regarding the how to when the current pilots are expiring or about to expire, that we can say, hey, can we sit down and extend this pilot? I know that's in the process. I believe it was you and Jay, correct?
That is right, but yeah, and Jay and I, we're going to meet on next week on this. But I would say that if the city ends up adopting a new pilot policy that impacts everyone, I'm not sure the value of necessarily saying, okay, we've got this current pilot, which frankly, we don't have very many, that is about to expire. I'd rather sort of link them all into whatever policy that this committee, would be recommending. So there really isn't much of a, what do we do with this pilot that's expiring, which is a problem.
Yeah,
But it's an opportunity of this committee to sort of write that, and give us as a city the direction.
okay, just to have more clarity of what it is, okay. Very well. And Karen, you seem to be pretty versed on IRS. Do you think that we can start figuring out what exactly they're doing by looking at the public documents?
Yes, I did send a sample, but your inbox might have been full. But I was working with an organization who sent in the Bay State breakdown of the community benefits. And I mean, I can send you that. That's where we would start, is looking at the IRS documentation, comparing it to the community benefits, exactly what they were, and then establishing, is this what we want? I mean, I think we need to do it for both hospitals. I think that's it on the hospitals. The colleges, I am working on that. There is another organization that does provide information on how to work with community benefits in pilot programs. So it's just a matter of, I guess, first coming up with a mission statement of this committee and what we anticipate, what we'd like to do, how to get that done, and then maybe splitting off and doing the research in each of these areas.
Right. So, yeah, so Karen, did you just volunteer to do that then?
What exactly do you want me to do?
Your idea of looking at documents to figure out exactly what community benefits they're providing.
Yes, I already did that.
Oh, you did?
For the
Okay.
hospitals, yes, I
For
already
the
did that.
hospitals, but is that something that you could do at least for the, including the educational centers for now?
Yes. What would you
Okay.
like me to do with the information? Because I don't want to just keep sending stuff that we're looking at in a parallel universe and not actually doing something about it. So,
What do you
Do you
mean
want-
parallel? What do you mean parallel universe?
okay, so say for example, you have two children, little toddlers, and they're playing next to each other, and they each have Lego sets. And so one is building and the other one's building, but they're not really coordinating with each other. They're parallel playing, which is what they do at that age. And then when one child sees that they have a particular Lego block that's going to work on the other person, and they hand over that Lego block so that child can complete, then that's cooperation. That's when they reach the next level, that they're collaborating. They're not just playing next to each other. And I feel like, we can't just keep sending documents without rhyme or reason to it. So I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do the work, but there has to be, a direction for this committee to start working on the research that's being done. Because I
I'm
put
not
a lot
sure.
of time already into it, and it's sat there for like 6 weeks. So I
Yeah.
just want to know what you want me to do. I'll do it, but then we have to have a reason to do it, and then a next step after that. So
Yeah,
I guess
well,
that's what I'm looking for.
that was a very interesting analogy that you used. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by sitting there, but what I do want you to do is to follow up on that idea you just gave us, which I think is very noteworthy, trying to figure out what the community benefits are. You seem to be more well-versed on it. So what I'm asking you is to put action on that. I am looking, which I don't see it on my inbox, the document that you just sent. So if you don't mind, if you can resend it to me, I will be very grateful. And then once you have, from what you identified to be community benefits that is how the entities may or may not are actually doing, I think the greenhouse poll will give us, and Councilor Whitfield, a better idea of what they're currently doing. So Jay, you have a question, sir? I see your hands up.
Thank you, Counselor. I wanted to just share, first of all, Karen, I'm happy to help in any way I can on this, because you really have a technical expertise in this, and I've read through a couple of your messages. I look forward to reading through them again. I think, to your point, I'd like to make a suggestion, not saying we have to decide this today, but at some point, to make sure that we don't have too many balls in the air, so to speak, picking either one group of entities or picking a single entity and starting to walk through this process might be advantageous. So I don't exactly know what that looks like just yet, but of all the entities that Ciara has shared with us, I'm sure there's one of them that, with a phone call to indicate that we're discussing this, they might say, well, we're obviously a little hesitant about this, but we're certainly welcome to sit down and have the conversation with you. So I think if we could identify, either a single entity or a single group of entities that we have a reasonable idea of, we understand at least how we can research what their benefits are. And if we can have a reasonable understanding of the city's cost to, I guess, support those entities and their mission, and a reasonable idea of what their ask is, I think sitting down with one or two entities and having this conversation, it might kind of fill in a lot of the holes in the discussion that we're having right now, so that we can understand how a permanent committee might replicate this across many different types of industries, and many different types of organizations. So that's kind of where my head is at with this, is a little more research to make sure we're well prepared to speak with someone, and then kind of just finding the best way to speak to that entity, and who is the who are the individuals that should be involved in that conversation to make sure it's successful, because ultimately it is kind of a formal conversation on behalf of the city. So I think there's a lot of different departments that have a stake in that.
Correct.
Could I share a screen on that that email that was sent so you can see what I'm talking about? It might
Sure.
make more sense.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, it should be up now. So this information is from the Loam Institute. And what they did is they surveyed how many? Think about 60 or 100 hospitals across the country. And they came up with a formula and a breakdown. So they sent me the Bay State Medical from 20, 21, and 22. And so
Karen, can you scroll up? I was just kind of reading the very top of that where it was kind of introduced what the rest of it is. Can you? Thank you. Sorry. Okay.
No, go ahead. Do you want me to read it aloud, or do you want to just?
No, yeah, I'm good with reading it as is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so her key takeaways is that Bay State in particular is spending less than others in the state on community benefits. If Bay State spent at the rate of the state average on community benefits, they would be spending around 14 million more each year. Additionally, they would have avoided tens of millions in federal and state income taxes in 20 and 21 when they had positive net income. Mercy Hospital also spent less than the state average. So this link here where it says state reports, that's the AG that I was talking about. Hospitals have to report the exact community benefits that they made.
So Karen, that's the average is 2.38% of what? For 2020, yeah, it's 2.38%.
That's all that they spent in the state average? Wait.
Correct. But
Karen, is it correct to say that what those are saying is, for example, in 2022, the average hospital spent 2.38% of its total expenses on community benefits? And then if we looked at, for example, Bay State Medical in 2022, they spent 1.43%. And so you're just basically making the point that you know, what this one entity pays compared to the typical hospital. And again, I think it's only fair that we say that, you know, there could be a lot of reasons for this, you know, socioeconomic, economic development and otherwise. We're just highlighting that there's a difference.
Correct. So
It's a great summary, Jay. Go ahead.
thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jay, for that. So really, these are just facts. So what's hidden behind them? I think that's something that we need to look at and see the reasons for it. So the CHIA reports, as you can see, 2021 and 22. If I click one of these on, it will bring us up to the documentation where their IRS filing is. And that's where you would look to see. So what's interesting here is that in 2021, when COVID hit, they had a profit, and this is after all the expenses, of 195 million.
Right.
In the following year, they had a loss of 165. It was also the year there were extreme bonuses at Bay State. So, you know, and that's a factor that we could look at in some way. I mean, that was an unusual thing with COVID. So, I mean, I can get the data, but I'm not a person who can really analyze it.
Okay.
So I'm hoping there is some
Right.
other analyst here that can.
Right. So Karen, it seems like you're right. You did that work is already done for at least the hospitals. If you could do for the other entities, educational entities, that will be a big help, I think. I think it will also give us a comparison with the two worlds, the health industry and the educational industry. And I'm actually kind of curious, based upon what you're saying here, what the educational entities average is going to reveal. And absolutely, we need to bring them to the table and figure that out. So, you know, if you
So,
could do.
all right, I can do that, Victor. But so we have the hospitals report.
Yeah.
So what do we do with it now? Like, how do we begin to analyze it and, you know, look through the IRS filing it and compare it to the community benefits that they have done and like.
So
That's
that's a great question. I pose a question to the group. Anybody wants to try to answer that? Mr. Burns, you seem to be the wise man in the group here. At least wiser than me.
You know, I think we just need to develop a process and like Jay said, maybe start with one of the entities and develop the process based on that.
But we will still need that information that Karen's talking about. Because we definitely need to know exactly what they're doing. To Councilor Whitfield's point, which I think is a good point. What exactly are they doing? How are they spending their money? And I mean, it seems to me, based upon what Karen said, that they just using Bay State being the biggest one, it's already under contributing at a rate of 1.43%, where the state average is 2.38%. 2.38%. So we will still need that information, correct, Karen?
Right. So I think we need to look at it, either some of us or all of us, to kind of like dig into it. I think that's the next step in order to develop the process once we start looking.
Karen, I think you need help on this.
Yes.
I get it.
Yes.
I get it, I get it. Everybody's raising their hand at once, I can see that. Ciara, you are the analyst in the group. Is that something you could try to endeavor with Karen?
I can speak with Kathy and Lindsay about it offline and just see, we have a couple deadlines coming up. But I can see if that's something I can fit into my workload. Yes, I would have no problem with that if I'm able to make it
Yeah,
if I'm able to make the time commitment.
talk to Karen and Ciara, Lindsay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Karen, we will circle back to you, but I do think you brought some very good points, and I thank you for that information there. And just please make sure, just send that to me again, because I was looking for it, I don't have it for whatever reason. And so that I can have that information as well. So, all right, just a quick time check. It is now 2:35. Anything else? Anybody has anything else? Karen, I know you had mentioned more than once already in this meeting about a mission statement. And so when we first started, we had a generic mission statement is to identify new revenue sources for the city. But you seem to believe that we need to be more specific. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, Jay and I had a conversation and he started a document and then I added to it. And it's a nice framework, but it needs to be discussed if this is the way we want to work through it. I mean, I can pull it up if you want.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Sorry, Council, I have another meeting that I got to
Sure.
prepare for, so
No problem.
I will follow up with you offline.
Thank you, Councilor Whitfield.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. I don't know what happened to the highlights, but anyway, it's a 3-page document. I don't know, we're running out of time here this year. My internet was unstable. Okay. Is this something that you would like to send out for people to review, or is this something we should discuss as a group, or?
No, we can send it out. We can hear the overview now, and then we can retake it in the next meeting or so. But I do want to give you the opportunity to state your case.
Okay, Jay, would you like to go first since you started the document?
Yeah, just very quickly, Counselor. Thank you, Karen. Karen and I spoke and we thought it might be helpful to document what we believe to be the stated goals of this subcommittee, just so that everyone was on the same page of what we were trying to accomplish between now and however far this committee goes in its existence. And I just thought that that would be helpful to document so that everyone was on the same page. So the first section here, was just, I was trying to ask myself, what's our mission? What's our goal? And so you have those bullet points there about, looking at the purpose of pilots, studying the current pilots, which is something we've already touched on, examining individual charitable organizations that we've touched on, and then creating a framework that gives the city the opportunity to make the ask to establish new pilot agreements, as well as, should we be successful in creating new pilot agreements, what do we do with that money? How can the committee put together recommendations that the mayor's office and the city council can utilize to make you know, decisions about those new sources of revenue that are in the best interests of the residents of the city of Springfield and our government. And then in addition to that, we've discussed, you know, the need to, you know, study, you know, fees, permits, and other revenue sources, which I believe that the CAFO had previously said that she is, as part of her due diligence, kind of re-examining everything. And that's another aspect of it, is to kind of look at that and see if there are some places where it makes sense to right size those things. And then you know, this second section, I tried to ask myself, what does a permanent pilot committee look like? So I know that Councilor Whitfield isn't on anymore, but I was going to say that I really agreed with her point about, you know, looking at the community benefits and the structure of those benefits and the potential impact of asking entities to enter into pilot agreements, right? If the only thing that happens is that, you know, we get entity A to say, yes, I'll enter into a pilot agreement and I'll give the city X amount of dollars annually, but then that nonprofit says, we're going to reduce our community benefits by X because we just don't have the money to do anything other than what we're doing. Well, that's not really the intent of this. The goal is to have a conversation and to really make the case that, you know, we believe these entities could do a little more and that it would really help, you know, our entire city.
Right.
But my point is that I agree with Councilor Whitfield on is this is really sensitive. It's tough. And so, you know, I've kind of put together two tiers of what a committee might look like. And I don't have the time to read it all, but at a high level, you know, you've got a first tier of really smart people that are having internal conversations, you know, citizens and, you know, representatives of the various city departments, you know, administration and finance, economic development, assessors, you know, and other entities that are going to be able to say, here's the entity we're looking at, and this is what we recommend we do as far as making an ask and working with that exempt partner. But then I personally envision a second tier, and it's the group that makes the ask. And the group that makes the ask is not necessarily the group that is doing the research. It may be more department heads, the mayor, him or herself, the city council president, something like that, a group that really is in the best position to represent the city of Springfield, that would make an ask based on the recommendations that this internal group, you know, put together based on their crunching of the numbers. And that's just an idea to kind of get the discussion started, but it's all based upon the fact that we've got a lot of research to put together, but and we have an ask that is extremely sensitive. At the core of this, they don't have to say yes. We're trying to make the argument that it's in the greater good of our community that they say yes, and we're willing to work with them on the amount that makes sense. And Karen, I'll defer to you on section 3. I believe you put together this section, but you had really good ideas.
Okay, so to pick up where Jay left off, so in the event that the legislation is passed in the House, tier 2 may not even be necessary because it would no longer be, it would be a mandatory 25% pilot payment, or not a pilot, wouldn't be called pilot then, but so therefore it would be just an assessment from Patrick's office. So that's that piece. So the section 3 is in here to allowable uses of the pilot funds. And we briefly touched on it earlier. These funds can be used intentionally, as the law would provide. And at the bottom here, I put down a couple other examples. of directed or intentional funds, and I don't think this is an exhaustive list. The Chapter 121 revenue, and the opioid recovery remediation fund. So those are some examples. This would be a
Right.
third one where these funds would be designated. And these are just options down here up for discussion.
Yeah.
Right, so we would have a CPA charge because the Community Preservation Act, we lose out on all of that taxable property that's tax exempt. And the second thing is the Housing Trust Fund. And 3 years ago, the City Council established the fund. The Redevelopment Authority hasn't held a recent meeting. And this could be a designated percentage to the
Mhm.
Housing Trust Fund, which would fund it. And, you know, it would have a steady source of funding.
You know, I have to say that Karen and Jay, there's a reason I asked you both to join this committee. I'm very impressed with what you put forward. Of course, we need to have a very robust conversation on this document. I do have some questions on this, but if you could go down for a second, Karen, on some of the uses of this pilot revenue. Compensation for members of boards and commissions is something that I have said before, and I say it again, that we need to give some sort of stipend to boards and commission here in the city of Springfield as a way of saying thank you for your service, because as Karen, you have so graciously and interestingly pointed out with your analogy, this is very time consuming for all of us. And so, but we do this with a lot of love and care. And so the compensation really caught my eye there. Karen, I know you said this, you emailed this before. I'm going to ask you to email it to me again. I can't seem to find it on my inbox. So I do have a question. Karen, are you all set with this document? Anything else you want to add?
Well, no, I was just, quickly reviewing what the titles are.
Okay.
The third one, the offset the tax levy, I think that should be an obvious one, since the taxpayers have been subsidizing each of these charitable organizations, and the taxes have gone up for all of us, that something should go back to offset the tax levy. And yeah.
Right. So Karen, as you know, I'm not a cycling expert, and I happily say that. I know what I know, I know what I don't know. But I have a question for Lindsay. Lindsay,
do you want me to take this down now? I can take it down, or you want me to leave it up?
I'll keep it off for a second.
Okay.
Lindsay, are you online?
Yes.
Good. How are you?
Good,
So
thanks.
just correct me if I'm not mistaken. Any money that we are able to recoup for the pilot, doesn't that go straight into the general fund?
Yes.
That's state law.
Yes.
Is there any wiggle room?
Pat Burns, I know that there's some exemptions and he knows them better than I do.
Pat,
Yeah, really, the only exemptions are gifts and grants, donations. There's also a exemption on proceeds from insurance, like if property's damaged. And if we receive a reimbursement of, I believe it's under 150,000, we can use that money without appropriation to replace the damaged asset. So it
Yes.
usually comes into play if there's a police vehicle that was damaged in a car accident, and we receive a settlement from the other motorist
Right.
insurance company.
Pat, but there's nothing that says that the money that we recoup goes into the general fund, that we sit down with the mayor and say, this is our thoughts. Can we get a commitment on this?
Right, these,
Correct.
like the compensations for boards and commissions, that would then be part of the budget process and would be appropriated as
Same,
part of the operating budget, but behind the scenes, this new stream of revenue would support that increase in the budget.
right. Well, same thing for tax levy offset, correct?
Correct.
Which is something that I kind of initiated this whole conversation, the tax levy office. So the mayor will definitely need to buy into this, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Karen, what I'm gonna do is, again, email this to all of us. I would like all of you to look at this, give me your thoughts on this. I'm gonna put this as an agenda item for the next meeting so that we can continue talking about this. Because I think this is a very powerful document. I am very, I think it's very clear. I'm very impressed with the clarity of it. But I do think that there's some even potential legal questions that we may or may not have to answer. And I don't have the questions, I don't have the answers for those now.
May I ask Patrick a question, please,
Sure,
Victor?
go ahead. Go ahead, Karen.
Patrick Burns. So these funds down here that are designated or intentional funds, the opioid recovery and the Chapter 121. So those are designated for a particular purpose, and to request those funds, it goes through the city council, right? Or like
There's
that doesn't go into the general budget, correct?
the 121A revenue does go, that supports the general fund operating budget. The opioid recovery fund, that was special legislation that was passed to create that fund. So initially, we had that money sitting in free cash and we couldn't do anything with it until the special legislation was approved. And that's when we established the opioid recovery fund.
Okay, so, but the 121, there was supposed to be community benefit in there, right? But those are requests to use that funding? I mean, is it reserved for a certain reason?
The
Because-
121A payments go directly to the general fund. There is a community development fund payment that was part of the host community agreement. And there was also special legislation that was passed to establish that particular fund. And I
But
believe-
that's separate than the 121 funds?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So what, so you're suggesting that although these 7 items here, these wouldn't be a special fund it goes into, it would go into the general fund.
Well, that's what Lindsay's saying, that is state law. So that's settled, that we cannot supersede state law.
Right,
So
but the
question is,
pilot
the mayor needs to
funds
buy into this.
with the legislation can be used intentionally, so I don't know if that is like legislatively, it would be a different story at that time where they would be designated, or I'm not sure how all that works.
Right. So I'm gonna put this on the further discussion, so that we can all make a decision on this. But I thank you for the clarity of this. I am very impressed with it, Karen. I really am.
Well, Jay started it. Oh,
Jay, thank you so much as well.
One city, one team, counselor.
So anyway, just a quick time check. The time is now 2:50. So I'm just gonna do a quick review. The next meeting is going to be on August 12th, same time, 1:45. That's gonna be on Tuesday, August 12th at 1:45, in person. I am going to, as action items, we have Patrick, you are going to figure out a total cost of city services for the organizations, hospitals and education, correct?
That was my recommendation. That's not
Yeah.
something I can produce.
Yeah, I would like to do that. I want to have some idea, because I think, Greenhall, you have a very good point there. And also, Karen, you're gonna start looking with possibly Ciara, once Ciara talks to Lindsay and Kathy, about what exactly, we already know about the hospitals, but what the educational institutions are doing for community benefits, correct? Okay, and so we also simultaneously have the CAFO looking at other areas of revenues, fees, and and fines, know that that's a route we definitely want to go to, but like I say, we're looking at everything. Anything else? Anybody has anything else they would like to add before we conclude the meeting today? No?
Counselor, I just want to say that while that was my recollection, it may be appropriate if Ciara and Lindsay are willing to just triple check that I spoke correctly. I don't want to speak on behalf of the CAFO regarding that. That was just my recollection from the
No,
last.
I can confirm that she's told me that at least twice to myself. So,
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
but she also told me it's going to take some time. She was very clear with me on that.
Mhm.
Anything else? Nope. Well, everybody, this has been a very good meeting, very robust, very, this is a growing pains. And so we are going to have good results in this. I don't mind taking my time doing this because I want this done right the first time. We can recapture anywhere between $5 million to $12 million. That will be a huge hit for the city. And we can do a lot of good on behalf of the residents that we so much love. So unless anybody else has anything else? Nope. So I will see you then.
Aaron, can you
Patrick?
stay for 1 second? Can you stay online for 1 second? I
Sure.
just want to know where a link went.
Okay,
I'm sorry, what did you need, Greenholm?
One of the slides that she had, there was a link, and I just want to see where it was linked to. So
okay. Yep.
for me, in a moment.
Right. All
Thank
right,
you.
all right, well then, if nothing else, the meeting is adjourned.